Welcome in to the DNVR Avalanche Podcast for a Saturday NHL Draft wrap-up show. The DNVR Avalanche NHL Draft coverage is powered by Bet365. Sign up and use the DNVR 365 code today. Deposit $10 and bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets, whether you win or lose that bet. Bonus bets can be used on spreads, totals, player props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. And, of course, when you do gamble with Bet365, you must be 21 or older, physically located in Colorado. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER today. We got AJ, we got E, we got Rudo coming to you live. The NHL Draft is mercifully over. Before we talk about the Avs guys or anything else, what a disaster of a draft this was. We're talking about across the course of 2 days, it took 9 hours to run out this entire draft. That is absurd. It's not like the NHL knew this was going to be a remote draft for well over a year. This was not something that they sprung on themselves at the last second that they had to adjust to. And whatever systems they had in place were not prepared for this. A 9-hour thing is ridiculous that anyone had to sit through this.
Yep. It's absurd, man. And it wasn't fun and it sucked. And, you know, the draft has become kind of like a marquee event for the NFL. Not so much for the NBA, but it's at least like fun. But it takes 2 hours. Like the draft is an expedient event in the NBA. It takes 2 hours, right? For their first round, not the entire thing. Yeah. But this was, 4.5 hours last night. We all wanted to die. I never wanted to cover another NHL draft. I didn't like. I'm looking forward to doing this next year. Wherever the draft is going to be, we're going to go, and at least we'll be able to like hang out, and we'll be able to look at pretty lights, and we'll be able to do something. Because this was nonsense, man. This just sucked.
Yep. And again, we talked about it. We warned people. We warned them. We did. Remember, we did a pod on it. We were mad that we were, going to this format. I think it's the worst kept secret in hockey. This was a one and done. Moving on next year to the regular stuff. I was listening to Kenny Holland there in the 7th round, I think, or 6th round. I don't remember. Again, it's all blurry. But he was talking about, he's like, I'm old school, I'm old fashioned. I like to be on site. And, no crap. It just makes things a lot easier. I don't know. Again, it just felt weird. Even at the end there's like no one in the stands. You're going to say, well, in those big rinks, there's no one. Well, you know what? It's a different feel. You're in an NHL rink and the boards are on and everything's on and everybody's still in the middle. You know what I mean? Like the tables are there. All the teams are there. They might have their bags packed, ready to go, the staff, but everyone's there. And it just feels like if you're one of those last picks, like I felt bad for Ian Park there. I believe that's Parks. Richards Parks' nephew. I want to say his nephew. Maybe it's his son. I think it's his nephew. Anyway,
nice.
He felt bad. He was right there, and it's like it was so weird. There's like no one in the stands, and he just kind of went down there, and it was I don't know. I don't know. I hate everything about it. I'm done because we don't have to complain about it anymore because it won't happen again.
Thankfully, it will not happen again, but. Hopefully the NHL can get their ducks in a row because the day one was one thing, right? Okay, it's the big round one. All 32 players are going to be there. You're going to put on this whole show for it. The NHL draft has established that day two is usually much quicker. It's something that you start going rapid fire, and we're 2 hours into day two and we're still in round 3 and everyone is going, what is happening right now? It did speed up minorly as we got into the late rounds, but yeah, I don't know. Let's never do that again, NHL. Let's have a better draft always, forever from now on. Anyway, we can move into the Avs picks. Talk about that. Talk about some of the other news here. The Avs did make all 3 of the picks. They did acquire that 3rd round pick in their Coyle trade the other day. So they made a 3rd, a 4th, and a 7th. Those 3 picks are, is it Francesco or is it Francesco?
Yep.
I don't know.
Francesco.
I know it's Dell'elce. I can do that part. I got that one right. Linus Funck in the 4th, and then Nolan Roed in the 7th. Nolan Roed exists as a player in the 7th round. I'd be lying to you if I told you I knew much about him. He's headed to St. Cloud State this next year, coming out of the USHL, where he played for the Tri-City Storm as a 19-year-old this last season. Linus Funck, maybe the most interesting of the group. He's a 6'3" defenseman coming out of the Swedish programs, was playing in the Swedish Major Junior League last season. Good skater. Probably the one we'll talk about the most here, or at least the one I'll talk about the most here. And then Dell'elce coming out of UMass as an overager at 20 years old. I think there's some interesting patterns there where you see the Avs. They have their guys that often they end up taking from the same locations, places like UMass. They've taken some kids that have been subscribed to the Storm at times. But I don't know. Let's kick it off. We'll go in draft order. So Dell'elce, another overager. Any immediate takes from you guys?
Yeah, I went back and I watched a couple of his games. I went through all of his. I went through all the goals that he was involved in, offensively and defensively, and looks pretty Avsian. He's a really smooth skater. He's got a really good puck handle on him. He's got a good shot. He activates really nicely. Jumps into the play. Gets really involved. The feet are good. The feet are good, and I came away feeling pretty good about it. Really intriguing. Obviously, he just turned 20 like last week. So he this isn't an 18-year-old. If he was 18, he probably would have gone
first round or something. Yeah.
Yeah, like tail end of the first round. But this is I didn't know anything about him going in, and now that I've watched a couple of his games, I feel exciting. He's an exciting player. And I'm intrigued, and he played really, really well at UMass this last year. He had a really good freshman year, and they gave him a lot more responsibility as the year went on. His game matured, but not great in front of his own net, I'll tell you that. Not great in front of his own net.
He'll learn.
Yeah.
I like him. I did see him live a couple times this year. Did catch my eye. Every time I watch a college game, obviously, watch a lot of BU games, live. Sasha Boumediene, right? That went, 28 yesterday? So, for me, the NCAA is a tough league. I don't care what people will tell you. It is good hockey. That's why you see all those picks there trying to jump in the next year. You know what I mean? You're going to see a lot of those picks there that were just picked in the top 10, make the switch. It's a weekend league. You have time to develop, right? Play 40 games. You get in the gym 5 days a week. It's so different. Francesco, I'm going to use his name as Francesco. He was a younger player last year. You just said it. He turned 20 last week, 2 weeks ago, whatever it was. Therefore, he was a 19-year-old, right? Just turned 19. It's still young in college hockey as a freshman. It is. I'm talking about, forget the exception of Macklin Celebrini and James Higgins, and still young.
Yeah.
And I remember watching him, saying, "Wow, I like him." As a freshman, I like him. He was trusted. Greg Carvel, the coach there, has an excellent program. Kel McCarr came from there, as we know. Taylor McCarr was there for a bit, right? Avs are very familiar with UMass. Obviously, Neil Shea been scouting for the Avs for a gazillion years. Very familiar with all those Hockey East teams. But this guy catches your eye when you watch a game, and I did. I was there and watching, and I remember saying, "Well, I like that freshman D. I like him." You know what I mean? So today, when you see that, you're like, "Okay, I get it now. I can see it." This is a guy that's going to go back, take on a bigger role next year, even though he had a big role last year. He's going to have a bigger role next year. Carvey does a great job there with those Ds. Look no further than Mario Ferraro and guys like that. Over the years, they've produced some good players. He's in a good spot. It's a good pick for the Avalanche. Is he perfect? Like you said, no. But he fits the mold of the Avs, right? You know what I mean? I think he fits the mold of what the Avs look
Yeah.
for. So
Definitely,
you know,
that's true.
and Nick, Nick Pryor, obviously, it's his first draft, right? At the head, nice individual. Avs fans are going to get to know him, hear about him a little bit more. Looks very methodical, very sharp young mind. Really enjoyed my a couple times this year that I ran into him and talked with him, and obviously been around hockey. It's a hockey family. Been around scouting. I think that was a good coup by CMAC, to get Nick Pryor to be the head of amateur with Wade stepping away, whatever it was last, what was it, January or something like that, right? That Wade, like whatever. Was it Clip was like
I think
January,
it was 2023, but yeah.
Was it the year before? Oh, yeah. There you go. Man, am I good or what? Anyway, so good enough and good pick there. I like that. And, again, you got his rights till he's 22, right? They're going to do that starting next year, right? Well, I don't know if it's going to work for this pick, but I don't remember when the cutoff is of you hold on to their rights until they're 22 years old. Whether you draft them at 18, you got
they have them for 4 years. They're good.
So it's still 4 years for him because it's obviously starting next year. So
I guess 3 technically because he's already finished his freshman year. But
yeah, again, let's put it this way: 2 more years. 2 more years, because if you get to your senior year, we all know the Jimmy VC rule. So, right?
True.
You can just go away. So, but again, something that's way closer than an 18-year-old that I know Chad's talking about that, but at the end of the day, it's got some value. Sometimes when you're not deep in prospects, a guy that's a little bit more ready sometimes has a little bit of more value to you than somebody that's raw at 17 and turning 18.
A couple of notes. Go ahead. You take it.
So with the re-entry guys, I've gone back and looked, and I think the 2022 class where they only drafted Chris Romaine and Ivan Zhigalov in the 6th and 7th rounds. Those were their only 2 picks.
Yep.
I think that's their only class since 2016 in which they have not drafted a re-entry player.
Correct.
So this is something that they do, and then look, I'm just gonna just shout me down when you get to a guy, a re-entry guy that you're really excited about.
Prishchapov, done.
Yeah, well,
he's the only one. Really, he's the only.
Ilya Nabokov.
Okay? Yeah, sure. Russian's a little different, but sure.
Ilya Nabokov, Jake Fisher, Nikita Prishchapov. All right, Jeremy Hansel. Maros Jadlishka, I don't remember if Ishimnikov was or not. I don't think so, though. Andrei Bulyalski, Taylor Makar, Niels Oman.
Hey, he played NHL games for a different org.
Luka Burzan, Brandon Sajin, Daniil Zhiravalov. All right,
it's rough out here. It's rough out here.
Dennis Smirnov. Those are some of the re-entry guys that they've had, that they've drafted, and some of them have had their moments at times, but it's tough because they've gotten very, very little out of it. Like the argument that you just made is the same argument that Nick Pryor made during his press conference when he said, "Hey, one of the upsides of drafting a guy that's a little bit older is that they can get through our system quicker, but also you don't promote those guys." The Avs have not put very many of those guys into the actual NHL. Prishchapov last year was kind of a revelation, okay? Good, everything that we could have ever hoped for. Came out on fire, got an NHL contract produced, got into 10 games. 5 of those games, he actually looked pretty dang good. We're all pretty hopeful that Prishchapov eventually turns into something, but they've gotten this route has produced very little to this point. So you have to forgive people if they're not too excited. Also, we're I like what I saw today going through his games and checking it out. There's a lot there that's intriguing, looks very Avsian. It's going to be a couple of years, we'll see. I don't even have faith that this guy's going to stay in the system, because if he's any good at all, they'll probably trade him at the deadline.
Move him. Yeah, I think that's the reality of every prospect in the Avs system. Oh, have I frozen? No, we're good. We're good. Every prospect in the Avs system except for Gulyayev, Nabokov. Pretty much every other prospect is like, hey, if you guys want to give us a decent roster player.
Pretty much.
I don't know.
There's one guy. Hold on, going back years back, and you can look it up. There's one guy we were going to take. Our guys were pushing hard for it, and it was a re-entry, and it was obviously a 20-year-old. And I don't remember it was him, and I'll say his name in a second, or another guy. I think we picked the other guy, or we ended up going the route, just sticking to the list, and whatever. It was Andrew Shaw, the guy who won 3 Stanley Cups. Right after
it happens.
Yeah, it was. And then you see it. He played in the NHL the next year, like Push-Push-Shaw, like he did, and then he stuck, and then they won. And I was like, gosh darn it! I don't remember who we took, but I'd have to go back and look. But
I want to talk about that. And there's a couple of other things I want to talk about here before we move on to Funck, but we do need to pay some bills first. So let's make sure we're doing that. And then we can, man, we're such nerds about NHL prospects, aren't we? We are presented by Toyota, the official vehicle of DNVR and the official vehicle of the Colorado Avalanche. They've got a vehicle for everyone. Trucks have always been part of Toyota's DNA, but they've got SUVs like the 4Runner. Of course, they have, they have sedans as well. 17 different models with all-wheel or four-wheel drive, if you're into that, whether that's off-roading or just more control on the roads and maybe in bad weather like we get here in Colorado sometimes. And they offer the most low or zero-emission vehicles combined, more than any other automaker out there. 16 different hybrid vehicles to choose from, including even trucks that are hybrids. So get over with Toyota today. Make sure you visit your Front Range Toyota stores, including AutoNation Toyota Rapo Centennial, Corbin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain State Toyota in Denver, Stevenson Toyota in Aurora, and Stevenson Toyota West in Lakewood. Toyota, again, the official vehicle of DNVR. Let's go places. Once you're driving around in your Toyota, don't do this at the same time. That would be bad, but drive to your local liquor store and pick yourself up some Coors Light to choose chill. Or, look, I'm always down for a good drive, all right? Colorado's beautiful. You can drive up into the mountains. But also, I'm lazy. You may have known that about me. You can stay at home and still get your Coors Light. Head over to CoorsLight.com/DNVR. You can get it delivered right to your front door. Thanks to our friends over at Instacart. You can choose chill without having to go out into the summer heat. You can sit in your backyard. You can even get it delivered there. Get it delivered to your front gate. It's that easy when it comes to Coors Light. Whatever you're doing, make sure you choose chill. Boy, I tell you, a couple of Coors Lights could have made this NHL draft go by a little bit faster. That was an option I missed out on. I probably should have ordered some Coors Light. Head to CoorsLight.com/DNVR today to get your ice cold Blue Mountain Coors Lights. Of course, make the most out of the times you choose chill. Choose Coors Light at CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. Please celebrate responsibly. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. So a couple of things I wanted to touch on here with Dell'elce specifically. One, will he learn how to defend in his own zone? I do get some big Tyson Barrie vibes, if that's what we're talking about here.
It's going to be like, that's probably the area of his game that you need to see the most improvement. He obviously needs to continue to get stronger. That's going to be true of everybody, except like Porter Martone. But like
even him, he needs to put on weight. Like
I think it's the stronger that he needs to get stronger is a more pointed criticism for a player that's 20 years old and not 18, because he's got those couple of extra years of physical maturity. And so that he's 2 years advanced and we're still having that same conversation is like, not giving up on it, obviously, but like, hey, he needs to start really adding some weight. He needs to learn how to play with that muscle. He's got it. That has to come around. Otherwise, it's gonna be a really hard uphill climb for him to get to the NHL and certainly to stick. But the defending in his own zone, there's a lot of work that has to go into that. Honestly, I'm glad that he's at UMass. As E had pointed out earlier, Greg Carvel's a really good coach at developing defensemen. They've churned out a handful of guys since he took over that program, which used to be an absolute wasteland. A glorified USHL team was playing there every year, and since
now
he
they're
got there, he
championship
is
caliber. Yeah.
Yep, he has turned them into a top 10 program since he's been there. That is one of those, like, when the Avs are signing like undrafted college free agents out of like Clarkson and stuff, you're like, okay, like it's a solid hockey school, but are we getting an NHL guy out of this? And getting a guy from a program that is tapping into specifically the skill sets that Dell'elce has. I'm encouraged by that part of it. You can at least see the vision here of how he's going to get there. But defending in his own zone is going to be a big key here. That is an area that he has to. I don't know. I speed ran a handful of games, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm an expert on his game. But yeah, there's a lot of work that has to be done there. I think Eric is right. 2 years in college, and then we can start having the serious conversation.
But it's funny because sometimes you're a late bloomer like that. You know what I mean? I call that a late bloomer. Like he's 20. You know, he just kind of came onto the scene at UMass. And first of all, he's bigger than Tyson. You know, he's a bigger.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Quite a bit. I mean, he's got 3 inches on Tyson.
Sure, but stylistically, similar players.
No, yeah, no, for sure. But sometimes it takes that. You get drafted, then all of a sudden you're like, hold on a second, this might be for real now. You know what I mean? Like, it's for real. I know I had that moment. You know what I mean? You get drafted, and you're like, and I remember my mental totally switched. You know what I mean? Like, okay, I got to do the things now to maybe give myself a chance to play. So if this guy's an intelligent young man, then he's going to listen to Carvey. And by the way, Carvey was my center in college. Not a big deal. You mentioned Clarkson, St. Lawrence, 7 miles down the road from Clarkson. We were way better. Not a big deal. But Carvey, good man. Yeah. So I think if he wants to commit, and it starts with that, right? You learn you go to those development camps starting next week, and then you see, and you'll learn that it's a tough league. You want to survive in that league, you have to be able to defend, right? You have to be able to defend. So you start eating your Cheerios, and you get to work, and you turn yourself into a player, and it's all about commitment. How much are you going to commit? When you commit, it's amazing what things can happen.
Yeah, this probably true of Linus Funck as well for the Avs, but just looking at their organizationally, obviously we know they're somewhat thin on prospects in general, but they drafted 2 defensemen in this class for a reason. When you look at their prospect pool, at least on the forward side, you have guys you can talk about. They just traded for Brindley. They have a guy like Dufour in there. You have a guy like Taylor McCarr. Bardakov is coming over. You can see some stuff in their prospect pool when it comes to the forward side. Obviously, the goalie side, Minor, Nabokov, they've had pieces. And then you look at the D, and it's pretty much Barons and Gulyayev. I guess you have Weinstein down there. We'll see. Pittner and Romaine are long-term projects.
Oh, ways away.
So it makes sense that they go out and get a Dell'elce and a Funck, because they needed to fill out that D side of their prospect pool a little bit here. It was awfully thin for where the Avs were at. In Dell'elce's case, I will say I do think the Avs have learned a little bit when it comes to drafting these overagers, that you need to have a plan with them. You can't do the Brandon Sagan thing where you just send them back for an overage year and you have no idea what you're doing with them. It doesn't do them any good. It doesn't do you any good. It ends up in a bad spot. And you see, arguably the most successful overager so far is Prishchapov, at least in recent history. And they turned him pro immediately. They gave him a spot in the AHL. Yes, the NHL stuff, the Avs were unbelievably injured and things just worked out that way. But at least they had a spot for him in professional hockey in North America to work with. Dell'elce is, going to be in college, but at least there's a plan there of, hey, you can spend a couple of years in college. You're, like he was talking about, you're shooting for a late bloomer type of player that really breaks out over the next couple of years in the NCAA. That's something you can work with a prospect. It's not just, well, I don't know, whatever's next is whatever. So I do want to give the Avs a little bit of credit there.
Yeah, and getting the last year they get a re-entry guy in Nabokov, but he had a job in the KHL, which is what
Yeah.
the third best league in the world.
Top 5
Yeah.
for
Like,
sure, if you're being very
Yeah,
harsh.
fair.
yeah,
Fair.
very harsh. Top 5, jeez. Um, yeah, so Nabokov had a full-time job in the KHL. You look at some of the previous guys. Prishchapov, as you mentioned, they turn pro. They drop him in the AHL. They challenge him. This is the nice thing I think about getting a re-entry guy from college is that you know what you're going to get. You know where he's going to be. And the fact that I reiterate this point because I think it's important. He's at a good program that has a recent history of churning out good pro defensemen at UMass because Andre Bulyalski was a re-entry guy out of the USHL that went into college, but he went to Vermont, and now again he was
Injury
terrible.
issues also.
There was a bad knee injury that really hurt a guy whose explosive skating was a huge part of his appeal, and that that does hurt them. But like you're talking about a guy from a good program that's already there, it's already established, and already had a good year in the NCAA. This isn't a USHL, their 7th-round pick that we're going to get to. That's a re-entry guy that had a good year in his second kick at the can in the USHL. This is a guy who had a really good year in college hockey on a championship caliber team.
And they got a couple more CHL guys coming, so UMass is going to be good this year again. Last year they were really good. They just had a bad start, or else they could have been right there near the top the whole year. So, yeah, I mean, but when it comes down to the funky Funck there, what's his forte? I don't know anything about it. I'm not going to lie.
He's big, baby.
I like him.
He's a big, smooth skating defenseman.
Yeah, his skating is okay. I only got to just time constraints. I only got to watch about 2 of his games. And there is a shift by shift of his posted on YouTube if people want to go check that out. But he's a fine skater.
Shift, by the way.
For sure. Big time hero of the season.
Yeah.
His skating is like solid. He's got really good size. There isn't anything about it, and again, I watched 2 of his games. There isn't anything about his game that jumps off the ice to you. It's all just solid. He's an okay skater. He's a fine skater, right? He jumps into the play and activates when he sees an opportunity. He reads the ice well. And I wonder, a lot of times some of this is just going to be hopium and some of this is just a genuine thing here. But when we look back at some of the guys that become solid NHL players who get drafted in the middle rounds, and we go, how in the world did this guy fall here? And a lot of times a common link between them is that the player had a lot of nuance in his game. That it's not a guy that you see.
Yep.
Exactly. Devon Taves actually is a great example of this, where there's not one obvious thing that he's doing at a really high level. He's just playing the game really well and producing really solid results. His defensive results in the J20 league over in Sweden were tip top among the prospects. He was a great defensive profile. They drafted a defenseman. Yep. That's pretty good. He's a right shot, which always is going to be just a hair more valuable because they're harder to find. So you are talking about this is a defensive defenseman first, but one who also has produced quite a bit of production everywhere that he's gone. So he has a good breakout pass. He's decent in a lot of aspects of the game. He's only 18. He's their only 18-year-old that they just drafted. So I'm actually pretty excited about this for a mid-round pick. I like this type of pick a lot more than I like like some of the. Here's a third-line guy from the CHL, that you're kind of just like, this guy's kind of a bum. This is a guy that has a lot more room to grow and has shown a lot of promise.
Stylistically, feels like a poor man's Eric Johnson to me. Obviously, the skating isn't there like what EJ had, but he's still a fine skater, has that size and reach that EJ had. Needs to get there. I'm not saying he's close. I do want to talk about him a little bit more, but we do have to pay a few more bills. So let's make sure that we get to that as, it's that time of year. It's officially summer, right? The solstice makes it summer. That's what it is. Yeah. Okay. So because it's summer, that means you got to get outside. You got to play some sports. And that's where Volo comes into play. Volo is Denver's most popular provider of adult sports leagues, pickup games, and events. They offer a ton of sports, from soccer to kickball to basketball, cornhole, pickleball, you name it. They've got them all, and they're a great way to make new friends, meet new people, and be social, or just to stay active and have a fun way to exercise by playing a few sports. You can play it all over Denver, including Lodo, Rhino, Highlands, City Park, Cherry Creek, South Broadway, many more places. And even if you're not in Denver, pretty much everywhere has a Volo chapter that you can get with if you're in a reasonably large city. So go check them out wherever you might be. You can get signed up today as a free agent, a small group, or a full team. All ability levels and backgrounds are welcome to join. If you're here in Denver, you can use code DNVR10 to get $10 off any Volo Denver league. I caught the sneeze. We're good. Go check out Volo. Use that DNVR10 code to join a league today. And after your exercise, you also got to make sure you're being financially smart. And that's where First Bank comes in. If you're looking for the banking that plays at your pace, whether you're tailgating, grabbing halftime snacks, or catching the game from the couch, First Bank is in your corner. With their secure, easy-to-use mobile banking app, you can check your balance, split the tab for stadium nachos, and stay on top of your money anytime, anywhere. It's like having a financial MVP in your pocket. And here's the play that pays. You can earn $300 when you open a new First Bank checking account. Use it to score tickets to whatever sporting event you'd like to go to, or whatever keeps your game day going strong. First Bank makes managing your money feel like a win. No games, just solid tools to help you stay in control right from your phone. Ready to take your banking game to the next level? Head to efirstbank.com/bonus. That's efirstbank.com/bonus. Of course, certain restrictions apply. Member FDIC. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. I do want to note with Funck, one, Swedish defenseman is a thing. It's been a thing for years. They often produce these quality, hardworking, solid defensemen with good skating ability. Nothing new there. I will say with Funck, did not play pro. An often feather in the cap of European defensemen is they got to play, whether it's the Swedish second league or whatever it is. He did not do that. He is in the Swedish junior league, so maybe there's an extra step there for him than what you might expect for your average European defenseman, and that's why he went in the fourth round, not in the top 100. Still, if I had to pick a guy I like the most out of this class, it would be Funck for me. I think when you look at how the Avs fill out their needs, not just they needed defensemen like I talked about earlier with Dell'elce, but Dell'elce fills a role of that offensive defenseman. It feels like a guy who maybe kind of fills that niche in the Avs system, where the Avs have a lot of rush defensemen. Dell'elce has shown some flash in the offensive zone, in the half-court setup or whatever you want to call it. He has a decent shot that he can get through, things like that, to maybe help fill a gap in the Avs system. I know we're talking years in the future here. And then you look at Funck as a more just solid defensive guy, a guy that in theory you're looking at in a couple years dropping into your third pairing and just setting and forgetting, a guy that can give you consistent minutes. So.
Swedes are born.
Yeah.
Swedes are born with a hockey IQ. They just are. I mean, I don't care what people say. For the most part, am I stereotyping? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, every guy I've played with, every guy we've been around, usually Swedes are intelligent. And when you're intelligent on the ice, it's a big part of the battle. You know what I mean? And then obviously if you can skate, another big part of the battle. Because if you can't skate, you better be really intelligent. Tyler Toffoli, right? I was listening at his. I was watching his video from the draft the other day. I was dying. He's a young man, and he's like, "Yeah, I might not be the fastest skater, but mentally I play fast, you know." And it's exactly what we always say. You know, this guy plays fast. I don't care that he can't move. His execution is fast. Swedes usually have that. I don't know why. I think it's a part of their development, the way they're raised at the rink when they're younger. It's totally different than here. European style is so different than us, the U.S. or Canada. But yeah, I mean, it's a type of pick that who knows, right? Who knows? They're the ones that you look back later and you're like, okay, that was a good one. Man, I'm going to give him that right now. That's got the sound of that.
Cujo asking if he can be our next Manson. I don't think he quite has the mean streak that a Manson does. There is some physicality to his game, but he's not the guy that's going to be like animaling people on the ice pretty regularly. So I would say no to that.
There is an animal. Is God, who picked him? Anyway, I'll find it. He's going to be you next year. He's going to be you next year. The guy's an animal crusher.
Stylistically, it's more like AJ said, right? Think Devon Taves, heavy stick usage, very active with his stick, and he'll rub people out along the boards, but he's not going to be blowing people up. Put it to you that way. Last pick, 7th rounder, Nolan Roed. I'm not going to pretend I know anything about him. He was picked 10 minutes before we went live on the show because the draft took so long. You threw a dart. He's going to college, so you have that 4-year path for him because this is the last year you can do that. I guess technically you'll be able to do it next year too, right? Because it doesn't kick in until July 1st. So with the drafted kids, you'll be able to do it one more year.
It actually doesn't kick in until September 16th, so we're good.
Oh, easy then. All right. Either way, he's a guy you threw a dart in the 7th. We'll see. That's about all I have to say on that one.
Yeah. I read the Elite Prospects draft guide on him, and it was not super kind. They call him a low pace single speed player. So great. Doesn't have any dynamic skills, isn't good in transition, and doesn't have much in the way of physicality. I'm not sure what's left, but yeah, I'm with you in terms of we'll see, man. I have no thoughts. I haven't gotten a chance to actually watch any of his video yet. That's what I'm doing as soon as we get done with this pod.
Yep.
So
one man's opinion. One man's opinion. That doesn't mean that it's the right one.
Don't know. Genuinely, we just didn't have very much time, turnaround time to actually dig into this guy. So
yeah,
we haven't yet.
So, we'll see on that front. What we do have though is the guy who was part of the draft team for picking him. We have Nick Pryor's, I guess it post-draft, not post-game, but post-draft presser for the Avs Director of Amateur Scouting. Let's hear what he had to say about the 3 picks the Avs made this year.
Well, thanks everyone. We'll start with Director of Amateur Scouting, Nick Pryor, and then Chris MacFarland will follow.
This is your first year in the driver's seat as Director of Amateur Scouting. Can you tell us a little bit about your vision for picking out young talent and what you've identified as specific needs for Colorado that have maybe compared or different from your time in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I think it's very similar to, places I've been in the past in Pittsburgh and in Philly where, as cliche as it sounds, it's always best player available. And, obviously the window is open for our team right now to win. And we're just trying to get the best player we can when our picks are up. And, it worked out this year that we were, really excited with our 3rd round pick, our 4th round pick, and our 7th round pick. And I think all the things like, we look at our 3 picks that we just took, and we value skating, we value speed. That's the way we want to play, and we feel that Francesco, Linus, and Nolan kind of fit the way that we want to play. So we felt good about that as a whole, looking at it right now.
What's just the overall experience like with the decentralized draft? The first year, was it more challenging? Was it less challenging because you have a war room situation?
The good thing about it was everything was set up great here by the organization. They did a great job with the war room, with the meeting spaces that we had, being able to use the facilities. We had everything that we needed. It felt a little different in that, it's you're by yourself a little bit. You don't see the other teams. You don't really get a feel for what's going on because you don't see things happening on the floor. But I think in terms of us having the setup that we have, it was easier to keep our focus on our draft board, and really hone in on our picks.
What is it like preparing all year for a draft where you don't have very many picks, and then also even going into next year knowing you don't have very many?
Yeah, I think our job still remains the same. Like, we got to be prepared for anything. Obviously, there's lots of movement at the draft every year, and it's our job to be prepared, whether it's a first-round pick or a seventh-round pick, and treat the scouting season essentially like we have a first, we have a second, we have a third, so on and so forth as it goes down. So we'll always be prepared as a scouting staff for whatever comes our way. If it's a first, second, third that we don't have, we'll still be prepared and treat it as if we do have those picks.
I know you weren't here last year, but the last two top picks are old. I guess what many would consider older players for their draft year. How do you kind of weigh taking an older player versus maybe somebody who has maybe a bit more runway and you're projecting a little bit more?
Yeah, good question. It's, I think we're at a place right now where we view the older players as players that can make an impact sooner potentially in our lineup, and maybe they're a year or two sooner or quicker to join the Eagles or to join the Avalanche than a younger guy would be. Obviously, I think there's kind of positives and negatives to drafting older and drafting younger. I think with Fran, an older guy that we feel, he's not far off if his game keeps progressing in the right direction, and that's exciting for us.
Do you expect the three guys to be at the development camp stage?
We don't have clarity on Linus or Nolan at this point, but we expect Fran to be there. Yep.
I imagine with limited picks, that puts a greater emphasis on development camp invites. Do you have a hand in that, and what can we expect for the talent next week?
Yeah, we will have a few invites coming in. I think we were still working on a few that went through the draft that would intrigue us, so I don't want to say anything yet at this point, but there will be a few that will be coming in as undrafted free agents.
When the team makes a trade like yesterday where they pick up a guy who was drafted pretty recently, do they reach out just kind of see what you have? I know you were at Pittsburgh at the time, but about your thoughts on Brindley and what you thought the draft year?
Yeah, Chris and Joe and Kevin and Cogs and the whole front office is really inclusive, and they'll pick my brain, they'll pick the scouts' brains on a trade like what happened yesterday, and get our thoughts on the player. And it's impressive to work for those guys because they're very inclusive, and they want all opinions to make the best decision possible for the organization.
So what are your thoughts on Gavin Brindley coming into the organization?
Yeah, exciting. I didn't follow him. I followed him from afar in pro hockey last year. I can't say I saw him play live, but he was an exciting player in his draft year. Ton of energy, ton of passion, very good kid, very high character kid. And I think sometimes the adjustment to pro hockey for young kids it's a lot, and it takes time. And but I think hopefully we can get him back on that track that I think we all thought he would have been on from his draft year to where he is now. But it's exciting. He's got skill, he's got energy, and lots of passion, and a player that we're all excited about.
What did you like about the last two guys you guys took, Linus and Nolan?
Yeah, Linus is he's a 6'3" right shot defenseman. He's got a really good feel for the puck and puck skills for a bigger body. He moves well. Like most, I think his game needs to round out and improve on the defensive side, and just continue to develop that two-way game. But he's exciting for us because he's big, he's mobile, and he can move the puck, and we were really excited where we got him. And then Nolan is a player that our scout Mike Battaglia has followed for a while, going back to White Bear Lake High School, Minnesota, to Tri-City in the USHL, and just a player that keeps getting better and better and better. A little bit older, but I think his development path is going in the right direction. He's going to a good program at St. Cloud, and I think with his goal-scoring touch and his competitiveness, he's going to give himself a chance as long as the development keeps going in the right direction.
Good, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. The picks are made. The development journey begins for them in the Avalanche organization now, whether that's towards the NHL with the Avs or if they end up being trade bait, who knows? Who's to say, really? But we did hear from the big man up top as well. That was the draft side of things. CMAC covers a wider range of topics, including some of the trade situations the Avs currently find themselves in. So let's hear from the GM of the Avs.
See, how we doing?
Good. How's it going?
Good.
A lot of questions for Chris?
Chris, first off, first year doing the decentralized draft, just wondering your thoughts.
Yeah, definitely different than what we're certainly accustomed to, right? It's you know, I've had the fortune of going to these things for a long time. I think you miss some of the contact, right? It's an exciting week at draft week, but you know, there are advantages to being in your home spot. So whatever they do moving forward, we'll continue to enjoy the process.
Chris, coming out of this weekend, you know, we talked yesterday, you have the cap space, things that you look ahead to free agency. What are the areas of the roster you guys are, you know, really kind of pinpointing, want to take a look at?
Well, I think we're going to look at all options. It may not be free agency. It might be like we'll do our assessments, right, and we'll see where those markets go, right, in terms of the terms and the dollars, and maybe a trade is the better way to go. But you know, it takes two to make those things happen. But I think we've got to look at and forward and on the back end. So we'll look at every avenue possible over the next, whether it's next few days or weeks or months, until we find the right fits.
In recent years, even before this past season, with all the movement that happened, it feels like traditionally, you know, you and Joe kind of lean more toward trades than, I guess, free agency. Is that just coincidence? Is that just not wanting to get into bidding wars? Like, what's the thought process there?
I think every situation is different, right? It just, if you can make a trade that you have the assets that the other team wants, you make a trade. Obviously, the advantage to free agency is you're just giving up money and you're holding on to your assets or your prospects or what have you. So, but you know, like I said, we'll look at all avenues over the next few days and you know, see if we can improve the roster. And you know, we got Bardakov coming over too, so we'd like to see if, you know, some internal guys where they're at in training camp as well. So we'll see what we can do.
With the cap going up, do you anticipate, you know, maybe some more activity this year than the last couple?
I think, you know, if they're still at 95.5, and then there's performance bonus overages that are a lot of, you know, there's a fair number that have that. So there's teams that are under that. So I think it's still relatively, you know, some teams have more space than others, but I think next year is where you'll see the loosening up in a little more dramatic way for more teams. But I think, yeah, it could be an interesting few days and weeks for sure.
Your team has like operated in some version of the LTIR space for 3 years in a row now. Now that you have space, how much have you sort of weighed the pros and cons of trying to keep some of it and bank it for February?
Yeah, there's an opportunity to be a cap accrual team for sure. You know, I don't know, you know, I think we'll be probably nestled to it. I don't know if we'll be millions underneath. I just think we're just going to see where the value is. It's not like we're going in to this offseason and going, we got to be at the cap, you know, for opening day, right? Like, if something makes sense and presents itself and it makes sense, you know, we'll obviously have to do the math, but yeah, we'll look to utilize it the full way we can. But you know, I guess the bigger part of your question is we have more clarity on Landeskog, right? Which the last 3 years and a few of those years we didn't know. So you're in that wonky space of, you know, if he comes back and we want him to come back, what do we do and how do you plan for that exactly? And and last year Val was suspended, and those are vice-like grips on what you're doing in the summer, because if you don't have escape hatches, sometimes teams will look to exploit you if you have to get in those situations where you have to move money suddenly. So I think the fact that we can count on Gabe, number one, he's a massive part of our team. So that's super exciting that we can, look at that $7 million and go, there's an expectation that he's going to have a normal summer and a training camp and be ready to roll for game one. So that's huge for us in terms of how we attack the next few days, because, the last few years it's been, how do we attack this and get out of it if we, so it's a challenge.
Martin Mitch's, sorry.
With a few coaching vacancies in the organization, can you give us some insight into how some of these roles may be filled, specifically with respect to some of those internal options now behind other NHL benches? What does it look like for assistant and head coach in Loveland and that power play coach role behind the Avs bench?
I think what I can say to you today is that that process is well underway on all three positions. Aaron Schneekloth did a fantastic job for us for many, many years. So super excited for him to join an NHL bench. He's worked hard and deserved that opportunity. And, losing Dan Heinold, definitely big loss there. So those are two significant roles for us in the developmental side. So those interviews are fully underway. There's massive interest in both positions. I think the Eagles organization is a very well-respected organization in the American Hockey League. I think it's a fantastic place to live as well. I'm biased, obviously, but they do a great job. So the interest in both positions has been overwhelming, to be honest. So we have got a lot of great candidates, and that process is ongoing, and similar here with our assistant coach position. So I don't know exactly the timeline, but I would like it to be sooner rather than later that we get those three positions filled.
Martin Mitch's is eligible for an extension on July 1st. I guess, how confident are you that you guys can reach a deal this summer? And obviously, the real deadline is July 1 of next year, but is there kind of a priority to get it done before the season starts so it doesn't linger?
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on any sort of pending contracts or anything like that to date, but we'll chat with a bunch of our guys that are going into the last year in the weeks ahead, and we'll see if we can find common ground. But Marty, played very well for us. He's a dynamic winger, right? I think he was top 20 in the league in scoring, so we're super excited to have him.
With Logan, he had the hip surgery last year. Is this the same hip, or is this his other side?
That's the other side.
Chris,
Yep.
Sorry, going back, just talk about trades and even the potential coaching hires and things like that. Even Nick was talking about it. We heard a few other guys on TV with the decentralized draft. Was there less activity on your phone this weekend than maybe normal, or past drafts, I should say?
That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe less for us because we didn't have picks really. In the first three rounds, sometimes you get those sort of trade up, trade back type of things. We did have stacked picks with the trade yesterday to be in the third and fourth round, but I don't know if it was the location of the draft being a part of it, but I would say it was more sort of our draft slots type of thing and where our picks were sorted. But the phone was ringing, but it maybe a little less, I would say. Jess?
Not looking for strategic details here, but maybe philosophically, how do you feel about offer sheets as a tool, and has your opinion on that changed after seeing what St. Louis did with Holloway and Broberg last year?
No, my opinion, I think our organization's opinion on it's a part of the CBA, and I think you've got to look at it from, do we have a realistic opportunity to use it, and A, do we have the picks to use it, and then B, are we in a prone position ourselves? As you do that sort of those snapshots well in advance, when it's not like you're doing that tomorrow because of July 1. So I think it's part of the CBA, and I think if teams feel it's going to improve their team, then they're going to give it consideration, and if they don't, then they're not. But we don't look at it as, I think this org before I got here, I think Ryan O'Reilly got one. 8-9 years ago. You know, so
After 12 lockout, 12,
yeah.
13.
So I mean, it's used a few times. So I think it's just part of the CBA.
Does that damage relationships with other GMs?
It wouldn't with us, no.
You've spoken in the past how highly the organization thinks of Ilya Nabokov. You guys got him signed. It sounds like he's going to spend another year in the KHL. Like, I guess, are you guys comfortable with that? And I guess, how do you view signing him and burning a year where you may not see much of him this year?
Yep, that's, well, we're super excited to have him signed. I think that's the key, right? We have some certainty that as soon as his year is over, he's coming to North America, and we'll figure out where he goes from there. Obviously, his development path over there has been very, very successful for him. I think Ilya knows that, you know, learning English and doing all that over the next 10, 11 months is only going to, you know, help him when he does get here. But we are very bullish on him as a goaltender, and his development is of primary importance for us. So our goalie department has done a great job with him and continues to do some development work, and we're super excited to have him signed.
You mentioned the back end as an area that had a little bit of work to do, and the top pair is obviously pretty set with those top guys in the car and Taves, but from the second pair down, have you identified any qualities in particular that you want represented in the complexion of the rest of the D-Corps?
I think we feel really good with, you know, we're very fortunate obviously to have Taser and Kale and Sammy Gerard and Josh Manson, and Sam Alinsky played very well. Be very curious to see, you know, Keaton Middleton's continued evolvement, you know, as training camp comes. But, you know, whether that's you know, a second pair guy or a number 5 type of guy that can be paired with Malinsky type of thing. I think we have guys that can play decent minutes throughout our lineup, and how Bedsy would like to utilize them. I think obviously if you're just looking at the obvious, to continue the left-right sort of theme, a left shot would go a long way. And if he was, you know, 6'3", 220, he can skate like the wind and pound people, we'd love to find that. But you know, those are kind of unicorns. But I think if we just can see if we can find a way to improve the defense, I don't think we have these sort of specifics. Just does it make us better, and how do we get it? Is it a trade? Is there a UFA that makes us better? And if we can't find it, either of those two, then we're going to have great competition, right, with some of the depth with the Eagles, and then sometimes things shake themselves out in training camp with a different avenue to try and attack it. So we'll definitely look at improving that slot, the one way or the other here over the, you know, whether it's days, weeks, or months.
A few more, Eric.
Last year, I think free agency began before Jonathan Drouin re-signed. Is that a player you guys are still in communication with, or does kind of the Val and Gade clarity make him a tougher fit?
Yeah, I think we're going to look at, you know, we obviously have a plethora of our own free agents with Kivy and Kivy Ranta and Jonathan Drouin and Ryan Lindgren, and you know, we'll never say never on any of those guys, but you know, I think we're going to breathe a little bit here and see what shakes off the tree, and you know, and if we decide to, you know, see if there's a deal over the next 2 days before July 1 hits and it makes sense, maybe we will. But you know, on Tuesday we'll be looking to improve the team for sure.
There has been a lot of chatter, like during the playoffs, about, you know, the way the Panthers play and the whole it's a copycat league, et cetera. And even, I think some of that stuff is even pointed out, your 2022 team is almost an outlier based on some of the recent Stanley Cup champions. Do you feel like the way the team is constructed and the way the team plays can still get back to the level of 2022, or do there need to be changes, either philosophically or roster or makeup wise?
No, I don't think we compare our team to 2022. I think that team was different, you know, was constructed differently, primarily in the cap, just in terms of what the contract Nathan was under and Val was under, and you know, all sorts of different things. We were, you know, had guys on lower deals and I think we can all agree that was a tremendously deep hockey team, and then guys get paid, right, as they become UFAs or have ARB rights and in the flat cap. I think we've talked about this, right, with the challenges of that time and the cap staying flat. It certainly hurt us and other teams in the cycle, but I certainly think this is a really good hockey team right now today as it is. I mean, I think we've got top two lines that when you look at on paper, some pretty good hockey players, and you look at the back end and what's currently signed. I mean, you start with the Norris Trophy winner Cale Makar and some really solid veterans in Tays and Gerard and Manson and Malinsky, what he showed, and it's a pretty good group to start, and then you throw in, I think in net we're in a more of a solidified position than we've been maybe in the past, and so I think we feel really good about it. I think obviously the expectations are the expectations, right? If it's cup or bust, there's only one team that wins the cup every year, but this is a good hockey team.
Chris, odd one for you here. There were some rumors that were going around last night during the first round, tying you guys some pretty big name trades, stuff like that. Nate gets on social media and squashes some of it. Just what's going through your guys' minds as you guys are seeing any of that stuff come across your screens?
Yeah, just you get texts, and I think Joe got something, and it's just you get used to it, right? Like it's most of the time it's just good fodder, right? It's good chatter. So we don't obviously, I'm not going to comment on rumors or other teams' names, but it makes for good hockey talk, that's for sure.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Long story from Chris MacFarland there. Great info in there, though. A lot of things people wanted to hear, maybe didn't want to hear. I don't know what to tell you. That is it for our show, though. We are already over the hour mark, actually, but we appreciate everyone hanging out. Roast My Roster, Monday. Go put your rosters in on Puckpedia. Use their GM tool. Put DNVR in the name of your roster to make sure we look at it. We'll be picking rosters tomorrow and Monday morning. So get them in tonight if you can. We appreciate y'all. That is it for our draft coverage presented by Bet365. This has been the DNVR Avalanche Podcast, and we will talk to you again on Monday.
We all silly like the mayor.